What's up, Samurai? We have for Founders Wednesday, we have one of the, I think the coolest cats out there with one of the coolest modalities. It definitely is in congruency with our love and service for the chiropractic profession and what we're trying to do with Chiro Sushi and Chiro Sushi Samurai. John Ruhlin from Giftology, and we'll have the links for you guys so you can go and get copies of his book, and it's definitely a must-have book. We're going to talk about his process with the book and working with Tucker Max and Book in the Box, but I want to dive into, man, where'd you come from, man? What's your story? What's your where'd you start from, and kind of your background?
Yeah, well, I grew up not in the necessarily the chiropractic capital of the world. I grew up in Ohio, but ironically enough, my mom was our core doctor since I've been like 7 has been a chiropractor, so I'm a huge fan. Ironically, I grew up on a farm milking goats every morning, one of the more sexy things on the planet, and my plan was actually to go be a DO or a chiropractor because my mom was such a huge fan of holistic health, and we've been using like Young Living oils for like 22 years or something in our family. But I really was motivated to get out of school debt free and decided to intern with a company. And I didn't want to get, do the typical go to work at Gap or whatever else. And if you're familiar with Cutco, the knife company, I went to go intern with them. And I'm not a salesperson, so I was like scared to death. Even in my interview, I wore like one tie that I had and wore glasses to look smarter. And my life really changed because I was dating a girl. Her dad was an attorney. And he was one of those guys that was every deal in town came his way. Every referral, like he was like a referral king. And he would buy like random things. Like he'd find a deal on noodles and then buy like a semi-load of noodles. And everybody at church the next Sunday would end up with like a year's supply of noodles, like 20 cases. And I'm like, Paul, that was 20 grand. Are you crazy? So I worked him the idea of giving away. I thought Cutco makes these handmade pocket knives. I thought all of his clients are CEOs of companies, banks, whatever else. And he got this little twinkle in his eye. And he said, John, what about the paring knives? Could I engrave those and give them out to my clients? And I'm like, you're going to give a kitchen item to the CEO of an insurance company, like this 60-year-old man? I'm like, Paul, I'm desperate. Why though? And he said, John, I found in 40 years of being in business, the reason I have more referrals and opportunities than I could ever imagine is I found that if you take care of the family in business, everything else takes care of itself. And so for me, it was like this like lightning bolt like moment. And so I started to basically invest in people the way that Paul was. And so I'd find out like a CEO of a $200 million company I'd want to get a meeting with. I'd buy a $200 carving set. I'd send it to him with a handwritten note, said, carve out 5 minutes for me. I promise to be with your time. And I'd get the meeting 2 weeks later. And then I'd close the deal for like 10. Yeah. So over the last 17 years, we've applied this principle of using gratitude as a competitive advantage, as a real ROI to drive sales, referrals, results, loyalty. And we now have 25 pro sports teams as clients and some of the biggest companies in the world leveraging our principles and having us outsource their gifting for them.
Beautiful, man. And so also you became the #1 best-selling Cutco, right? I mean, that's what I've read and heard, right?
They've worked with like 1.5 million college kids, and by the time I was a senior in college, we were #1 all time out of 1.5 million people in their 70-year history. So it worked out pretty well.
Talk to me about your group. It's under your name. What do you guys do, and who do you work with, and what do you help them with?
Yeah, well, we have small companies that use us, $2 million operations and startups and whatever else. But our core business is people that are already givers. They're already generous. They already understand the principles of being generous, whether from a core value or from a biblical perspective. If they're a giver already, then they resonate. So we help that leader. Every leader says their business is about relationships, but then they send like a box of cookies or a bottle of wine at Christmas, and like that's their way of showing gratitude for 365 days of loyalty. Or they send some random Starbucks gift card, like, thank you so much for your $1 million in business. Here's a $50 Amazon gift card. Like there's not congruency there. So companies hire us to pick the gift, ship the gift, handwrite the note. They basically, their entire appreciation, gratitude, marketing strategy, they outsource to us. So when somebody wants to send 1,000 gifts to 1,000 people, they hire our firm and we logistically handle everything. They don't touch one thing. It all happens automatically behind the scenes.
Dude, that is one of the coolest business concepts I've heard of. And I'm not blowing smoke up your rear end, dude. I honestly think that's it's one of those like the Jimi Hendrix of like riffs where you're like, it's so simple and good and juicy and tasty, but you're like, why didn't I think of that? And that's so. Have you ever worked with chiropractors, or do you see chiropractors fitting into your model at all? Because they do. There's chiropractors out there with, especially. I can think of one of our mentors in here, the Sean Dill from the Specific Centers, or Liam Schubel. These guys have 20 clinics across the country or other countries with thousands of patient base. I could see them using you.
Yep.
Would you see it working in the chiropractic world? How would you
Oh,
apply it?
yeah, there's no question realm or anybody that's dealing with high level relationship building. So it could be all their referral partners. Maybe they have people in the community that refer business to them because of their specialty. It could be just key customers that won't shut up about them and they've sent 20 clients their way. And it's great to send them a gift card, but how could you take that up a notch and get them to brag on you more? It could be other influencers in the community. It could just be their employees. Like if you have, 30 clinics, you probably have 10 people at each clinic. That's 300 people that are important to you. And it's one thing to give them a bonus at the holidays. It's another thing if you actually love on them and their kids, their spouse, and you make them feel like $1 million. Like one of the things we do for all of our employees, we pay to have their houses cleaned every other week. It costs us $2,000 an employee. But it gives us like $40,000 in value. Like we never lose an employee ever. And if we have to recruit employees, guess what? They're the first people to go tell all their friends, like, if you work here, you get a house cleaner. And a lot of our employees are stay-at-home moms, have kids, husbands. It makes their life easier. And so it's not just always the tangible gift. It's thinking through, like, how do you show gratitude in a way that actually resonates with the other person? And most people, they check a box once a year and they're like, they left because of money. And most of the time they don't leave at your company as an employee or a client. They leave because you didn't serve them. You didn't appreciate them. They didn't feel heard. And so there's no question that companies can leverage our principles or our company on the outsource side in any profession, including chiropractic.
Cool, man. Now I found you through one of our Chiro Sushi Summit mentors and presenters next year, Tucker Max, who I got a little bit of crap from at first when people were like, you're going to work with Tucker Max, you're never going to have any women ever come to your event again. And guess what? Here's the beautiful thing. 80% of the early pre-bird enrollees are all women, and they're all single, attractive DCs. Like and I'm like, there's something here happening. I got to ask because you're also, I've read, you're very spiritual. I read that you read a Bible and kind of, you like one of your chill out things to do is hit a spa or hit the hot tub or even your bathroom.
I use a sauna every morning. I use an infrared sauna in my house every morning where I read and I do my devotionals and read a Bible every morning. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's part of my core practice.
And that keeps you grounded and gets you focused and ready for your day. I have to ask, as a spiritual person, did you have any conflicts at first before working with Tucker and booking the box, or was that ever not even a question?
Yeah, well, the first time I heard Tucker, and I told him this, like I was like, dude, I'll never work with that guy. Like he just did not come off the right way. His presentation sucked. But I don't think he had really mapped out Book in a Box well to be able to communicate. And he wasn't really given much time at this event. It was like, but then one of my other mentors who's actually coaching their CEO, Cameron Harold, said, you need to talk to Tucker one-on-one. He's actually a really good guy and he's really solid. He knows his stuff. He's really solid. He's not the guy that wrote the books. And I'm like, okay, Cameron, if you say so. So I went and talked to him one-on-one. And then I met his business partner, Zach. And I was like blown away. And I was like, man, these guys are a great pair for each other.
Yeah.
And then I started to talk to other people that had went through the process. And I'm like, as a Christian, if I don't believe in second chances and forgiveness and being able to move forward with things and allowing people to blossom and become different people, then I'm not really walking out my faith, number one. And number two, these guys have a brilliant business concept. I probably sent them, half a dozen or a dozen clients because I really believe that I would never have put Giftology out into the world if it hadn't been for them. It had been in my head for freaking 5 years. I kept trying to say, I'm going to write a book. And it never happened. And when I signed on the dotted line, it was $25,000, which is not a cheap date, but it was the best investment we made in 2016 was working with them because the book was done in less than 6 months. It was incredible.
Yeah, you exploded on the scene, man, and thank you for sharing that about working with Tucker because we obviously, full disclosure, everyone knows he's going to be a mentor. We promote him. I think that his work can help chiropractors. There are chiropractors that have already been using him, and obviously we know the importance of having a book and what it's done for you. For people that want to go and get your book, I always try to ask authors, where do you guide them to? Obviously, the overall book in whole, but is there a certain part where you would say, hey, definitely dive into this section, this chapter, or this part of the book? Where could you point our listeners to that are going to be picking up your book? And we have the links above
Yeah.
for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you can go check the book out at Amazon, but I would say even before you do that, before you go buy the book, we created like a lot of times people are like, can you boil things down and give me some pointers so I at least don't do stupid stuff? Like it's like when I take my 3 girls bowling, they just want, like you need the bumpers so you don't like go in the gutter. And so we did create a PDF that's like the top 10 worst gifts to avoid giving and why. Because people are like, oh, I thought that was the most thoughtful gift. And I'm like, no, that's a horrible gift in most situations. Now, there are times, there's always anomalies. But if you go to giftologybook.com/Hyatt, HYATT, you can download that free PDF. And that really boils down the top 10 worst gifts. And then if you're like, man, this is good stuff. And what I like what John said, you could dive into the book because really Giftology is our entire playbook, but it's on Audible or even reading it. It's a 2-hour read. So it's not like, I just read Plant Paradox. It's like 11 hours on Audible. It's like, it's like, it's an amazing book, but dang, 11 hours is a lot of stuff to get through. Like ours is 2 hours. It's boiled down because I'm an entrepreneur. Like I don't have much time and I didn't want to put a bunch of fluff in there because I wanted people to actually get to the end of it. And that's one of the comments most people say is like, I bought Giftology. I started reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm done. Like I read it in one flight. But I would say that, a couple key points in the book, towards the beginning, I kind of frame that, gratitude is fluff if you don't actually do it world class. Like every one of your chiropractors talks about, we have the best supplements, whether it's from Standard Process or, Poliquin or wherever you're getting your supplements. Like our lobby's a certain way, like our different like manipulating styles are all world class. And then when you go to give a gift and it's like the McDonald's version of the gift, that's not congruent. So whatever you do, if you play full out and go all in and are just as thoughtful about your gifting and your gratitude and your appreciation as you are about all of your other parts of your practice, that's 90% of what we do. We beat people up and say, you're an idiot for not being thoughtful. If you say relationships matter, and like we give like things like it has to be personalized, no logos, no branded crap. Like it's not a gift. Like you'd never go to somebody's wedding and put compliments of Tristan on the Tiffany's vase you're giving to this couple. Like that'd be the cheesiest thing in the world. But people do that in business and they call it marketing. And that, and so in our opinion, all the marketing books are wrong when it comes to gifting. There's a difference between a promotional product, which is fine. That's a little handout, a stress ball, and a gift. If you want to give a gift to somebody, you make it all about them 100%. And that's why the house cleaning works, because we made the gift all about our employees. We didn't say, what do we want? We said, what would make their life better and easier? How can we acknowledge them? And when you start asking those tough questions, you're like, crap, me giving cash to them, they're just going to go blow it on, bills and expenses and whatever else. And the money's going to be forgotten about. Whereas house cleaning actually makes the quality of their life better, which makes them a better employee. So there is a selfish element to it. So does that make sense?
Yeah, dude. This is part of our goal is to bring the smartest people in the room into our room, and my goal at Cairo Sushi is to help chiropractors think kind of outside the box. And you have been one of the best guests that we've had on, and from a concept standpoint, and also from a sharing standpoint, I want to thank you for this a lot. I want to ask you because we're going to have the link to that PDF, but if you could give us your I think you talked about Starbucks cards earlier. If you could give us
what are some of the others?
Yeah, just like one or two other ones that are just like the worst gifts to give.
Well, everybody, at the holidays, number one, giving gifts at the holidays, like I'm a gifting company and it's considered heresy to not give gifts. This year will be about $350,000 in gifts that we'll send out. I don't give one dime of gifts between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it's because as an entrepreneur, I want 100x return on the gifts I send. So it's like me wanting to kill Christmas, which as a Christian is a crazy thought. As a gift giver, it's even crazier. It's like committing Harry Carey. But I don't send, because I want to send a gift in the middle of March or in the middle of June or in the middle of October, not in November or December. Some of the other worst gifts to give, food. Everybody sends food. And now there's every like food intolerance on the planet, number one. So you have like gluten people, you have alcohol people. Maybe I'm on a certain diet and I'm intermittent fasting, like all these other crazy things. Number two, you spend $50 or $20 on it and it's consumed in 5 minutes. So if you're measuring your cost per click or your cost per impression, you spent $20 to get one impression. Whereas if I send you a handmade knife, piece of cutlery that has your name on it, and you use it every day for the next 20 years, my cost per impression is like 2 cents. Now, it may cost $150 to give that gift, but every time they use it in front of their friends and family with their spouse, they're thinking of me subconsciously. So 80% of the gifts I send out, I want them to be lasting, like not like lasting like 20 minutes, like lasting like 20 years.
Yeah.
And so no food, no alcohol. I don't like plants for that reason too. Now, if there's a death in the family, that's fine. But in general, people send flowers and it's like, oh, it was only $75. But I'm like, those lasted 3 days. What if you spent $100 and they had it for the next 3 years? Wouldn't that be a better ROI? And they're like, oh, I never really thought about that. Like, yeah, you can think about gifting the same way you think strategically about any other part of your business. So those are some of the things that are on there. One of the other ones that's interesting, my friends that work at Apple hate when I mention it, but I'm like, Apple's now no longer cool to give as a gift. When you can get an iPod or a iPod mini or whatever else for test driving a car, it's lost its like cachet. Give something else other than the normal gifts that all the other sheep are giving out.
Yeah, dude, I'm gonna be honest, man. I like all three of those that you mentioned, except for and yes, the Apple one I used to do for I used to do that for referrals for employees at one of my last startups. Wow, you just blew my mind, and I got a stinky feeling in my gut. But this is great stuff, and everything you're saying, you have you have quantifiable, like measurable metrics behind it to show, hey, you're getting the better bang for your buck. So this is awesome. We're getting a lot of feedback and comments, so this is great from the live group. I want to thank you, dude, for coming on and sharing today. If you could give one kind of pearl of wisdom left back to a chiropractor from an entrepreneur who's being successful and looking and because you know this industry a lot more than some of the people, like last week I interviewed Noah Kagan. I'd ran Fishkin on the week before that, for example, and they weren't as well invested into chiropractic. But since you have a little bit better peek behind the curtain, maybe you know a little bit more about kind of the woes of our branding and our battles to be kind of the premier for natural health, but yet, even internally we have our own fighting. I want to ask you, because I asked if you were given the keys to the chiropractic branding ship, or if you just could give a tip to a chiropractic entrepreneur, and you had an elevator pitch to give them, what would it be, my friend?
Well, I think that even in 2017 with Whole Foods being bought by Amazon, like there's still like a lot of questionable medicine out there. Like, what is it for real? Is it legit? And I know it's legit because I swear by it. I've used it for 25 years since I was young. But I would go all in on loving on people, and you can't afford to buy $150 knives and different things like that for every client. But what you can do is treat them like a human being. And I think that the one thing that I do more of than just about anybody else is I send handwritten notes. And as you're looking to build a practice, people make decisions and will run through walls for you when they feel a certain way. And oftentimes that acknowledgement of getting a handwritten note from somebody in this day and age when everything's so digital, it's so powerful. Like to the point where we spend $9 on our letterhead. Like when I send somebody a handwritten note, it comes on a $9 piece of steel, and then we write on it with a Sharpie. And that's how important we feel like handwritten notes are. So if you can't afford to give higher end gifts and nice things, you can acknowledge people in a very significant way and do things at a level where everybody else is like trying to like up their competitors by 1 or 2%. And what's a sheet of paper cost? Like 10 cents, and we're willing to spend $9 for it. So we're willing to take it like 90,000% higher. And because of that, when somebody gets a handwritten note from us or a gift from us, they're like, oh my gosh, like Ruhlin Group doesn't just talk about like hands-on and serving and client retention, all these things. Like he actually eats his own dog food. So if I was, to be given the keys to the castle in the chiropractor realm, I would make sure that people walk away feeling acknowledged in person. But I'd also on the back end make sure that they're feeling acknowledged, because they're going to get other people like, why are you going to a chiropractor? What do? They make you come for the next 50 years, twice a week. Like there's all these haters and doubters out there. And if you can build up a reputation of being somebody that loves on them and has their best interest in mind, they'll go and they'll freaking knock those people upside the head and be like, you don't understand. Like this guy helped me and he actually cares about me. And here's what here's the kind of things that he does. And that's, I think, really important, and people acknowledge that at a core level, and they make decisions based upon how they feel emotionally, and then they justify with logic and all these other things. But the emotional component is massively important.
Beautiful, dude. I got to tell you guys, if you guys are listening above, We're with John Ruhlin from Giftology. We're gonna have the links above for his group. For if you're interested in getting help more and having someone hand over or take over control and be the premier leader for your Giftology basis for your business or for a chiropractic practice, obviously. We have a link to his book on Amazon and Audible. We'll have up there. And if you're listening to it on the podcast, it'll be on the side. I want to thank you so much. Dude, I never thought I would even have a bigger bro crush on someone than Noah Kagan. But you've literally taken over my bro crush because there's so much love just flowing out of you, dude. I mean, chiropractors would just eat you up like an old grandma, like coming up to you, like, where have you been all my life? So,
dude, I'm super grateful for the profession and for the people, and I mean, like I said, that's I've been raised by them, so I feel very honored to be on the show and giving back. So
thank you, my friend. Thanks, guys, for listening. I want you guys to get the book, at least get the book, and give yourself a heads up and a better start than your competitors out there, and learn more by clicking the link above about how his group can help you guys out. Thanks so much, John.
Thanks for having me.